Boys and girls, this is Mr. Manise here, and in this video I am actually going to walk you guys through our first quiz review of the year with exponents. Most of my videos are done either with my iPad lesson videos or maybe using this webcam to show you guys how to do stuff on the calculator, but I'm actually going to start a new string of videos where I just walk you through and actually work out the whole entire quiz review or the whole entire test review. And my disclaimer that I'm going to say for every single one of these videos is I don't want you guys to watch these videos until you've actually worked through the problems. So if you have not worked through this first exponents quiz review, I want you to stop or pause the video, go back and work it first, and then come back and watch the video. These videos are meant for you to be a refresher, or if you're like, man, I just can't figure out number 7 and number 12, go to the website, watch the video so that you can figure out how to do the problems that you don't know how to do or can't seem to get the right answer. Because just like I preach all year long, if I'm trying to teach you guys how to play guitar, it's not enough. You cannot sit there and watch me play guitar. You can watch, but then you have to pick up the guitar and put your fingers on the fretboard, and you have to actually practice. So these videos are not going to do you that much good unless you actually put the pen and the pencil to the paper and actually work these problems yourself, and then come to the video and see how I work through the problems to iron out any misunderstandings that you may have. Okay, so before I jump into the video, I want to show you guys something real quick that is essential to math and geometry and education in general. And this is just a little gift that I found online. It's just no big deal, but just so you guys know, I mean that's the Clemson Tigers, and they're just kind of, you know, just polishing, just kind of admiring the trophy that they just won for the 2016 football national championship, taking down the juggernaut Alabama. And that's just the way Clemson rolls. Like I said, no big deal. But, alright, so let's go ahead and jump on in. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. And let's take a look at the first problem here. Number 1, we have 5 raised to the negative 9 power times 5 raised to the negative 13 power. Now remember, all these exponent rules, power rule, quotient rule, product rule, all those rules only apply if you're dealing with the same base. I have to have apples and apples. And once again, as I'm going through these quiz and test reviews, they're not meant to be actual lessons. I have separate videos on the actual lesson. I'm just going to kind of work through the problem and kind of refresh, briefly touch on the concepts. But here we go. So I've got apples and apples. I've got a base of 5 and I've got another base of 5, so I can go ahead and use our exponent rules. This is the product rule. We're multiplying the two 5s together, and our product rule says I simply add the exponents together. So I'm going to add the negative 9 and the 13, so that's going to give me 5 raised to the negative 9 plus 13 power, and that's going to give me 5 to the 4th power. And depending on how you're asked to leave that, you could either leave it that way, or if you want to go ahead and punch that into your calculator and raise 5 to the 4th power, you'll get 625. Now remember that the little trick that I've shown you guys in class, how you use your graphing calculator to check all these. Please, 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 I'm begging you to use this little trick that I've shown you. And I actually do have a separate video on this where I'll walk you through how to do it. Just to refresh your memory here, you've got to assign a number to every letter on your calculator. That way it doesn't matter if they throw J's or K's or Z's or P's at you. It doesn't matter. You can use this for any letter, any variable that you see. So again, just real quick, if I want to assign a number, let's say I want to assign 3 to the letter A. Remember, don't ever use 0s and 1s and 2s with my little trick here. So I'm going to start with 3, and I'm going to press 3, and then I'm going to press the store button. Store is down here right above the on button. I'm going to press 3, store, and then I want to assign it to whatever letter I want. In this case, I want to assign it to A. So I'll press alpha A, and then I press enter. Now my calculator, every time I press the letter A, it'll know that that's 3. And I just keep going down the alphabet. 4 store, alpha B, enter. 5 store, alpha C, enter. All the way down through Z. This is a crucial little trick, guys, for exponents, polynomials, quadratics, you name it, any kind of algebra with variables. It's a great way anytime you're trying to simplify an answer, put it in standard form or simplest terms. This is a great little trick to make sure you didn't make a mistake. Okay, so how can I use this? Well, let's go back up to our problem here. Let's type in our original problem here. So I'm going to type in, make sure you guys can see this in the calculator. I'm going to type in 5 raised to the negative 9. Now notice now, depending on the calculator, my calculator is a TI-84, it's an older model, but it still it keeps the cursor up there in the exponent. So depending on your calculator, if you guys have one of the newer versions, then it's probably going to keep that cursor up there. If you have one of the older models, it'll automatically come back down. But you got to pay attention to where the cursor is. In this case, I'm still in the exponent. I need to come back down to the ground. So I just need to press the little over button right here where my finger is. Just press over, and notice that drops the cursor back down. Okay. All right, so I want to multiply that times 5 raised to the 13 power. And I'm going to press enter. Now guys, I do not care what that number is, and I'll say that a million times. When you're simplifying, when you see the word simplify, you don't care what the original number is when you type in the original problem. You just want to make sure it matches your answer. So we're saying, well, in this case, we already know it's 625, but we want to make sure that that matches 5, this guy right here, 5 raised to the 4th power. Does it? And of course it does. When these two guys match, guys, you know you have simplified the problem correctly. And I'm telling you, that is one of the biggest differences between the students who make A's and B's and the ones that make C's and lower. Okay, being willing to go back, and once you do this 5, 10 times, it'll become much, much easier and quicker, and it'll just be like riding a bike, and you'll just be able to knock it out quickly and not have to spend too much time. I mean, I can check my answers in less than 10 seconds on stuff like this. So please take that extra little bit of time to check. Okay, let's move on to number 2. We have f to the 8th times g to the negative 7 times h to the negative 5. We have apples, oranges, bananas. What can I do with that? Well, I can't do much. I can't use the product rule. I really can't do anything because all the bases are different. But if you guys notice here, we have negative exponents. Remember, one of our rules, a bunch of really, really smart people a long time ago got together and said, you know what, we're not going to allow you to leave negative exponents in your answer. And we said, okay, fine. So what do we do with those guys? I don't want you to think put it on the bottom. I want you to think flip. Because if it's on the bottom, you got to put it on the top. But since there is no bottom here, there's no fraction bar, everything's on the top, I'm just going to throw these two guys on the bottom, the g and the h. And so therefore, I'm going to keep the f to the 8 on top. So I have my f to the 8 on top, and I just simply throw the g to the positive 7 and the h to the positive 5 on the bottom. Now remember, when you flip, you change the sign of the exponent. That's the whole reason for flipping, is to get rid of that nasty negative that we don't like to have in our final answer. Okay, so real quick again, let's just check this. I'm not going to do this for all 10 guys, but I do want to do it for a few just because I want to hammer home how important I feel like this little trick is. So let's go alpha f raised to the 8th. Drop my cursor back down. I don't even need to press the times button if I don't want to. My calculator assumes it knows that that's multiplication. So alpha g raised to the negative 7. Drop my cursor down. And then I have alpha h raised to the negative 5. Do we care what this answer is, guys? No, we do not. I just want a number. 3.5 to the negative 5, who cares? That's fine. Now let's type in what we think this is equivalent to. We've simplified it. We're saying that that's the same thing as f to the 8th over g to the 7, h to the 5th. Okay? Alpha f raised to the 8th. Drop back down, divided by, now here guys, this is one of the reasons why I chose to do this one on the calculator. Whenever you have more than one thing in the denominator using this little trick, you must put all of this in parentheses. I cannot just say f to the 8th divided by g to the 7, h to the 5th. I cannot do this. G raised to the 7, h to the 5th. I cannot do that. If I do that, I will get the wrong answer. They will not match. See, those two numbers don't match. Because my calculator sees this as f to the 8th divided by g to the 7th times h to the 5th. It puts that h to the 5th on top. That's not what we want. The h to the 5th and the g to the 7th are on the bottom. So I have to go alpha f raised to the 8th, come back down, divided by parentheses, alpha g raised to the 7, come back down, alpha h raised to the 5th, come back down, close the parentheses. Now notice we get back the two matching numbers. That is critical, guys. Okay, so make sure you put that stuff in parentheses when you got a bunch of stuff on the bottom using this little trick, or anytime you're doing these kind of operations on your calculator. Okay, let's move on to number 3. Ramp up the difficulty ever so slightly. Alright, so we got 5x to the 5th, y to the negative 2, all of that times 3x, y to the 10th. Now notice here, we're multiplying all this stuff. So really and truly, guys, I don't even need these parentheses. I'm just simply multiplying all this stuff together. Okay. Now you'll hear me say this a lot over the course of the year. Anytime I'm dealing with algebra and signs and letters, coefficients, variables, all this kind of stuff, I have a little 3-step process that my brain goes through that you'll hear me say a lot in class. And that goes signs, coefficients, variables. Signs, coefficients, variables. Get the sign right first, guys. I can't tell you how many times students make careless mistakes simply because of their signs. And as you get further on into math, things get a little bit more complicated, and problems, instead of taking 20 seconds, they take 1 minute or even 3 minutes or something. You get that sign wrong at the beginning of the problem, it's going to screw up the rest of the problem. So make sure you get the sign right first. So here's what, now in this case it doesn't really matter about the signs because everything's positive. Okay, so signs, coefficients. So take a look at and simplify your coefficients first. Guys, this is literally what my brain sees when I see a problem like this. That's all I see. My brain literally focuses in on the 5 and the 3. I didn't see any negative signs, so I'm focusing right on the 5 and the 3. Let's multiply those first. Okay, so obviously that's going to be 15. 3 times 5. Alright, so now I'm going to match up my apples and oranges. I have x to the 5th times x to the, that is an understood what? That is an understood 1. That's the product rule. What do I do with my exponents? I add them together. I add the 5 and the 1. That gives me x to the 6th. And then I have oranges, y to the negative 2, y to the 10th. I add my exponents, negative 2 plus 10. That gives me y to the 8th. And there's nothing else I can do. We got apples and oranges. Let's check this real quick. Let's go with our original problem here. I don't even need the parentheses again. 5. Now here I can just press the X button. I don't need to press alpha X. So just press X. 5x raised to the 5th, drop back down. Alpha y raised to the negative 2, drop back down. I can press times 3. That's fine. Times 3x alpha y raised to the 10. Come back down. I get a number. Don't care what that number is. 1.3 times. There are 21 zeros behind that. Fine, whatever, doesn't matter. Let's type in what we think that simplified answer is equivalent to. 15x raised to the 6th, drop back down, alpha y raised to the 8th. Drum roll, ta-da, bam, they match. Guys, that is such a good feeling on a test or a quiz when the chips are down and you take 10 seconds and check this and they match. You're like, bam, confetti falls from the ceiling, you move on to the next problem, and you're 100% confident that you got the answer right and you didn't make any careless mistakes. Okay, number 4, moving right along. This is an easy one. Really easy. Well, we got parentheses, negative 13, c to the 15, d, e to the negative 4th, all raised to the 0 over cd. And guys, anything raised to the 0 is a big fat what? Bam. See you later. Bye-bye. Anything raised to the 0 is a big fat 1. Just cancel it out. Just cross it out. It just goes away. You're just left with a 1. So therefore, my final answer is 1 over cd. No reason to check that one on the calculator there. It's pretty straightforward in this video. Now, you guys, yes, I still would recommend you check every single one of these, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to move on. All right, here we go. Here's where my little 3-step process comes in. Signs, coefficients, variables. Signs, coefficients, variables. Okay, so here we go. I got a negative inside the parentheses. Okay, anytime, is that negative being raised to the 5th power? Yes, it is, because it's inside the parentheses. If that negative were on the outside, all bets would be off. If there's a negative on the outside of the parentheses, I would just drop the negative down, and that would be part of my final answer. But if it's inside the parentheses, I do have to raise it to the power, whatever power it is. Now, the rule is, when you raise a negative to an even power, what do you get? Well, let's think about it. If I square a negative, that's negative times a negative, that's a positive. What if I raise a negative to the 4th power, another even power? Well, that's a negative times a negative, that's a positive. If I do it the 3rd time times a negative, that takes me back to a negative. And if I multiply by another negative the 4th time, well, guess what? That takes me back to a positive. So anytime I raise something to an even power, 2, 4, 36, 1 million, and 16, it doesn't matter, I'll always end up with a positive. On the flip side, of course, If you take a negative and raise it to an odd power, of course, it'll be the reverse. You'll be left with a negative sign there. So once again, this is what my brain sees. Okay, first thing I focus on is that negative. I want to take care of that guy first. I've got a negative raised to an odd power, so I already know that I'm going to have a negative in my final answer. Okay, so let's go ahead and put down the negative. And now signs, coefficients. Okay, coefficients, so I'm only focusing in on that 3. Okay, let's take care of the 3 next. The 3 is being raised to the 5th power, so just punch that in your calculator. 3 to the 5th is 243. Okay, now, yes, of course, you could do this in one step on your calculator, but remember, you got to put that in parentheses. You cannot do negative 3 raised to the 5th power. You cannot do that. Okay, in this case, it doesn't matter. We do get the same answer, but watch what happens if you do it to an even power. Watch if I do negative 3 raised to the 4th. See, my calculator throws out a negative 81, but that's not right. Because if you put it in parentheses, negative 3 raised to the 4th, that's supposed to be even. See, whenever you raise a negative to a power, you got to put it in parentheses if you're going to do it in the calculator. Okay, so make sure you don't make that mistake. Okay, so negative 243. Now let's focus on the variables. I've got x squared. Now here's the power rule. Okay, I've got a power raised to another power. What do I do in the power rule? I multiply my exponent. So I multiply the 2 times the 5. 2 times 5, that gives me x to the 10. Same thing for the y's. I multiply the 3 times the 5. That gives me y to the 15. And then for the z's, 4 times 5 gives me z to the 20. Okay, let's check this one on our calculator. So let's go, I'm going to type in exactly the way that I see it. Parentheses negative 3 x squared, x squared, alpha y raised to the 3rd, drop back down, alpha z raised to the 4th, drop back down, parentheses, all of that raised to the 5th. Get some number, fine, don't care what it is, negative 8.9 times 10 to the 66, there's 66 zeros behind that, okay, that's pretty cool. That'd be nice if I had that much money. Alright, so let's type in what we think our simplified answer is equivalent to. Negative 243 x raised to the 10, drop back down, alpha y raised to the 15, drop back down, alpha z raised to the 20. Drum roll, bam, they match. Ta-da, bam. Move on to the next problem. Awesome, love it. I love it, love it. Okay, number 6. Okay, so we got a little bit more stuff going on here. All right, this is the quotient rule. We're dividing. Okay, so what do we do with the quotient rule? What do we do with our exponents? We subtract them. Okay, or you can flip them. You can do that, and sometimes it will behoove you. It's in your best interest to flip them first. It's just kind of a matter of personal preference. That's why I love math so much. A lot of times there are more than one way to solve a problem. You can do it whichever way you're more comfortable with. Here we go. Signs, coefficients, variables. Signs. I've got a negative on top, nothing on the bottom. Negative over positive is a negative, so I already know before I get started I've got a negative in my final answer. Now I don't have to worry about that guy anymore. I know I've got a negative in the final answer. Signs, coefficients. Coefficients. 24 divided by 8 is 3. Yes, you can do that in one step. Negative 24 over 8 is negative 3, but I still like to break it down in individual steps, because you'll see later on when we get to polynomials and quadratics and stuff where that really will help you out a lot if you can kind of get used to going through that little 3-step mini process. Okay, so now we're going to use the quotient rule. And what do I do with my exponents? I subtract. So once again, now here I've got an r to the negative 10 on top and an r to the negative 3 on the bottom. I could flip both of those. I could put the r to the positive 10 on bottom and r to the positive 3 on top. And then I would be doing 3 minus 10, which would give me negative 7. In this case, for some of you guys, hey, maybe that's easier. Or you could do it a little bit longer way. You could have, I'll just go ahead and bring this down over here. Let me just write this, negative 24 over 8 equals negative 3. Okay, so let's bring this down here. So I've got negative 3 raised to the r. Now here, we got lots of negatives. If you simply just decide you want to stay here and subtract, you've got to do negative 10 minus a negative 3. When there's a negative in the bottom, using the quotient rule, that's always going to make that a double negative. Okay, so this is basically negative 10 minus a negative 3. Okay, and then I'm going to have s, I'm going to subtract -2 minus -6, -2 minus -6. Sorry about that. All right, so what are we going to be left with? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 negatives. Got 7 negatives in the same problem. That's why using that little calculator trick is so beneficial. You can iron out your mistakes or catch your mistakes. Okay, so -10 minus a -3, so that's going to be -3r. That's going to be r to the -10 plus 3. And then I've got -2, that's going to be a plus 6 on the s's. So that's going to give me -3. -10 minus 3, that's going to give me -7. And then -2 plus 6 is going to give me s to the 4th. Now once again, I can't leave my final answer like that because what? I have this guy right here. Can't leave my answer with a negative exponent. I got to throw that guy on the bottom. So this guy and this guy stay on top. So I have -3, s to the 4th, and the only guy that goes to the bottom is the r. And I change that to a positive. So that will be my final answer. -3 s to the 4th over r to the 7. I'll let you guys type that into your calculator just to confirm. Let's move on to the next one. Number 7. Don't know why that looks like there's a little period right there, guys. That is a typo. Just a little dot, maybe a little dot from the printer. I'm not really sure. All right, so we got ab to the 5th, all raised to the 2nd, over 7a to the 4th, b to the 2nd, all raised to the 3rd. Okay, so here we've got some more product rules. And then this one, this is kind of a double combo problem because we're going to use the power rule and then we're going to use the quotient rule. So let's go ahead and use the power rule. So I'll multiply a, that's an understood 1. So 1 times 2, of course, is just a to the 2nd. Multiply the 5 times the 2 for the b's, that's going to give me b to the 10. All over. Now, is this 7 being raised to the 3rd? You betcha. 7 raised to the 3rd, type that in your calculator, you get 343. I don't have to worry about signs in this problem because everything is positive. That's nice. Now I do the a's. I do 4 times 3. That's the power rule again because I got a power raised to a power outside the parentheses. That's going to give me a to the 4 times 3, which is 12. And then for the b's, 2 times 3 is going to give me b to the 6. Now we're back to the quotient rule. Okay, I already know I've got this 343 on the bottom, so I already know my final answer is going to have a 343 on the bottom. That's never going to change. And now it's just a matter of matching up the apples and the oranges. A to the 2nd. Sorry about that. Guess I need to put this on silent. Okay, so I've got apples and apples, so I'm going to subtract my exponents. I've got a 2 minus a 12, so that's going to give me an a to the -10. And then I'm going to have the b to the 10 minus 6. All right, so that's going to give me a b to the 4th. Now, what do I have to do? I cannot leave that a to the -10 on top. I've got to put it on the bottom. So my final answer, the b to the 4th, that guy stays on top. B to the 4th. The 343 stays on the bottom, and then the a to the +10 gets flipped. So my final answer is b to the 4th over 343, a to the 10th. Okay. All right, so let's move on to number 8. Number 8, home stretch here. Signs, coefficients, variables. I see a negative over a negative. A negative over a negative is a positive, so those just kind of go away. They just cancel each other out. All right, coefficients, 11 over 44. Can I simplify that? Yes, I can. 11 goes into 44 4 times, so that is the same thing as 1/4. So I already know that I'm going to have a 1/4 in my answer, or a 4 on the bottom. Okay, so I can go ahead and put the 4 on the bottom. Now here I'm going to use the quotient rule. I got 3 minus a -2. That's a 3 plus 2, which is going to give me an r to the 5th. And then for the s's, I've got an 8 minus 11. Now remember, when you do the quotient rule, when you subtract, whatever answer you get will initially always be on the top. So if you do top minus bottom and you get a positive exponent, you leave it on the top. If you do top minus bottom and get a negative exponent, you still leave it on the top. And then you've got to go back and flip it, of course, and put it on the bottom. But initially, the answer remains on the top. So 8 minus 11 gives me s to the -3. That's an understood 1. T to the 1st over t to the 5th is a 1 minus 5, which gives me t to the -4. Okay, so now it's a matter of flipping. I got to flip the s and I got to flip the t. So the r to the 5th stays on top. This 4 is on the bottom. It stays on the bottom. And I just flip the s and the t. So that's going to be s to the positive 3 and a t to the positive 4 on the bottom. Okay, I'm going to do this one on the calculator because you got a bunch of stuff. I want to check it because I just want to show you guys again. You got a bunch of stuff on the bottom, so you got to make sure you put all that in parentheses. All right, so let's type in our original problem. I've got negative 11 alpha r raised to the 3rd. Drop my cursor back down. Alpha s raised to the 8th. Oops, raised to the 8th. Drop my cursor down. Alpha t. All right, divided by. Now, what do I have to do, guys? That's right. I got to put all that in parentheses. Okay, so parentheses negative 44 alpha r raised to the negative 2, drop my cursor back down, alpha s raised to the 11, drop my cursor back down, alpha t raised to the 5th, drop my cursor back down and close the parentheses. Type that in and oops. Oh, I think I've got a little space in there. Sorry, let me type that in again. Negative 11 alpha r raised to the 3rd, drop my cursor down, alpha s raised to the 8th, drop my cursor down, alpha t, and divided by parentheses negative 44 alpha r raised to the negative 2, drop my cursor down, alpha s raised to the 11, drop my cursor down, alpha t raised to the 5th, drop my cursor down, close the parentheses, and why am I getting a negative? Negative 11 alpha r. That's why. Somehow my 0 got assigned to my letter R, and that right there, guys, is why you can't use 0s, 1s, and 2s. So I need to assign a number to R. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20. All right, so 20 store alpha R. Okay, sorry about that. Negative 11 alpha R raised to the 3rd, drop back down, alpha s raised to the 8th, drop back down, alpha t, divided by parentheses negative 44 alpha r raised to the negative 2, drop back down, alpha s raised to the 11, drop back down, alpha t raised to the 5th, drop back down, close the parentheses, and we get a number, 50,000. Okay, fine. Let's type in what we think the final answer is equivalent to. Let's go alpha r raised to the 5th divided by parentheses. I've got to drop my cursor down. I've got to put all of that in parentheses. 4 alpha s raised to the 3rd, drop back down, alpha t raised to the 4th, drop back down, close your parentheses. Bam, they match. Okay, so again, that is a great. I'm always amazed year after year how many students will take their quiz and their test and they'll turn it into the box with 20 minutes to go, 25 minutes to go. And that's great that you know the problems well and you just kind of burn through the quiz or test and you're well prepared. That's great. But why not take a few extra minutes and go back and check your answer if it's available to you? That's going to take you from an 86 to a 97. Well, that's going to take you from that 95 up to 100, that one problem you made that careless mistake on. Okay, so home stretch, last couple of problems here, number 9 and number 10. Okay, we got 7v to the 4th, w to the negative 2, all of that to the 3rd, times 4v to the negative 3rd, w to the negative 4th, all of that being squared. Okay, so we've got some product rule here and some power rule, so let's go ahead and do signs, coefficients, and variables. I don't have any negatives. So 7 raised to the 3rd is going to give me 343. My pen will cooperate. 343. V to the 4th, and raising that to the 3rd, you're going to multiply your exponents. So that's going to give you 4 times 3. That's going to give you v to the 12th. Okay, and then I got negative 2 times 3. That's going to give me w to the negative 6. All right, and then over here, the 4 is being raised to the second power. I do have to square that 4, so times 16, 4 times 4. Then I got to multiply negative 3 times 2. That's going to give me a v to the negative 6. And then I got to multiply negative 4 times 2. That's going to give me a w to the negative 8. And now signs, coefficients, variables, everything's positive. So now I got to do coefficients. I got the 343 times the 16. Punch that into your calculator and you get some big number, 5,488. And now I've got the product rule. I've got apples and apples. I add my exponents. 12 plus a negative 6 is 12 minus 6. And that gives me v to the 6. And then I've got negative 6 plus a negative 8. That's negative 6 minus 8. That gives me w to the negative 14. I can't leave that guy on top because he's a negative exponent. I've got to throw him on the bottom. So the 5,488 stays on top. V to the 6 stays on top. And the w to the positive 14 goes on the bottom. Okay, I'll let you guys check that one on your calculator for practice. And the last one. All right, we've got a bunch of stuff up here. All right, so I see 3a to the 0. Remember, anything to the 0 is a big fat 1, so you can just cross that out. A to the 0 is just 1, so you just have 3 times 1. All right, so now I've got a 3 to the 4th on top, 3 raised to the 4th power. That gives me 81 on top. 8 times 4, that's the product rule. Multiply your exponents. That's the power rule. 8 times 4, that gives you b to the 32. And then 2 times 4 gives me c to the 8th. All right, on the bottom, the 2 is being raised to the 3rd. Signs, coefficients, variables. 2 raised to the 3rd power is 8. Negative 3 times 3, that's the power rule. That gives me a to the negative 9. That's a b to the 1. 1 times 3 is 3. That's a b to the 3. And negative 7 times 3 gives me a c to the negative 21. Okay. Now, signs, coefficients, variables. Coefficients. Can I do anything with 81 over 8? Does that simplify? Well, if you're not sure, if you're not good at doing those larger numbers, fractions in your head, just punch it on your calculator. 81 divided by 8 gives me a decimal. Now you press math, right here, math, and then fraction, and your calculator will convert it to a fraction for you. Uh-oh, 81 over 8. Guess what? That means you can't simplify it. Okay, so there's nothing else we can do there. So I already know there's going to be an 81 over 8 in my final answer. Okay, so now we have the quotient rule. Well, I have apples, bananas, apples, oranges, and bananas. Well, I don't have any more apples, so I only have an a to the negative 9 on the bottom. I can't leave that negative, so I've got to flip it. Now this time it's on the bottom, so when I flip it, it actually goes to the top. So I have an a to the positive 9 on top. All right, for the b's, I do the quotient rule. Subtract 32 minus 3. That gives me a b to the 29. And then for the c's, I've got 8 minus, remember when there's a negative on the bottom, that turns that into a double negative. That becomes 8 plus 21, which gives me a c to the positive 29. Is there anything else I can do with that? No, there's not. That's it. So that's my final answer. There's nothing else I can do. Let's check this one last time, and that'll wrap us up with this video. So let's go ahead and type in the a to the 0. That's fine. Parentheses 3 alpha a raised to the 0, come back down. Alpha b raised to the 8, come back down. Alpha c raised to the 2nd, come back down. Parentheses, all of that raised to the 4th, come back down, divided by parentheses 2 alpha a raised to the negative 3, drop back down. Alpha b, alpha c raised to the negative 7, drop back down. Parentheses, all of that raised to the 3rd. We get a number. Sorry, that wasn't in the picture. We get a number. Okay, don't care. 1.1 to the 43rd, that's fine. Now let's type in our simplified answer. 81 alpha a raised to the 9th, drop back down. Alpha b raised to the 29, drop back down. Alpha c raised to the 29, drop back down, divided by, now here I don't need to put parentheses because there's only one thing in the denominator, so I can simply press divided by 8. Ta-da! Bam! They match. Hallelujah. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you were able to kind of iron out any mistakes, careless mistakes or errors, any misunderstandings that you may have. Once again, as we go through the year, hopefully you guys will be watching a lot of these videos to help you prepare. Make sure you are working out these problems on your own before you watch these videos, or else you're not going to maximize the benefit from it. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next one.